Hello there everybody, Adam from WhatCulture, and yes, Adam from WhatCulture here with those star rating videos you like so goddamn much. Now you know the drill with these kind of things. We go through the pay-per-view we've just seen, in this case, the Royal Rumble 2019. We assign every single match a star rating based out of 5, just like they do in the proper wrestling. But the game's changed now. Bit of big news on that one. While in the past this was slightly confrontational, maybe a little bit at odds with what Dave Meltzer would have put in his star ratings, the video now comes 100% bona fide Dave Meltzer endorsed, because I made these little star cakes and I said they're Meltzer cakes and he said they were cool, so now we're just best friends, aren't we? So
this is essentially the olive branch that has put behind us all of the bad work that Adam Wilborn has done to try and absolutely berate Dave. But let's be honest, star cakes.
This is every single match from the Royal Rumble 2019, star cake rated. Proud of that.
Good, 5 out of 5 that. Yeah. So we kicked things off in a huge way for the opening match of the night, which was the SmackDown Women's Championship match between Becky Lynch and Asuka. Of course, we had the man trying to regain her championship after losing to Asuka in the triple threat match at TLC last month. But with everyone so excited about that match and everything that might happen elsewhere, and as well the man and all of her excellence leading up to this point, I think they kind of forgot a little bit about the Empress of Tomorrow and just how good she can actually be when given a chance to shine. In a match that had brutal strikes with some really clinical kicks from Asuka and some ferocious forearms from Becky Lynch, this match was about as stiff as a match can get, and the intensity levels were high. It was so blunt. There was some spots that really shook both people to their core. You had Asuka doing a sort of awkward fisherman suplex onto the outside, which shattered Becky, and then the retort to that was Becky landing a huge Bexploder off the top turnbuckle. Both women were evenly matched, and there wasn't really much in this one. Despite the crowd initially being strongly behind the man, you could kind of hear the tide was slowly beginning to turn, as it kind of started turning into a bit more of an even split than just everybody ahead of the man. They were cheering for both women, and as they were exchanging submission hold after submission hold, even doing each other's submissions at one point, there was this massive tension that was building in the match between every close call and every near fall. In the end though, much to the shock of pretty much everyone in the arena, definitely the people who were here watching the live stream last night, it was Asuka who would get the victory with a submission over Becky Lynch, and clean as a whistle. No interference, no shenanigans whatsoever. We had anticipated perhaps Becky could lose the match, but perhaps not in this fashion. After a spell of valiant submission counters by Becky, the Irish last kicker had managed to withstand the Asuka lock to a point, but the Empress of Tomorrow was one step ahead. She managed to transition beautifully into a cattle mutilation submission, and unfortunately for Becky, she was left with no choice but to tap out to the SmackDown Women's Champion. This was a great match for both women, and nice to see them both getting such a good reception from the fans, not just the man on this particular occasion, because let's be honest, she's managed to steal the show from so many people at this point, you kind of forget there's other people involved here too. But Asuka getting just as much love as the man did on this particular occasion, and let's face it, I actually think a clean victory for Asuka in the end might just actually be exactly what she needed. This won't hurt Becky Lynch in the long term, and I think, to be fair, based on what happened later on the night, there's not going to be too many complaints from everybody about the end result. Yes, she may have tapped out, yes, it may have been clean, but let's be honest, Becky's an absolute star. Using her star power to elevate Asuka back to where she belongs is exactly what she should be doing. 4 stars for this one then. Asuka back to her best, and ultimately, Becky will not lose anything from this defeat.
What can you possibly say about this match that isn't immediately obvious from this closing shot of The Miz looking quite unbothered and very happy, his dad looking absolutely elated with the Tag Team Championship belt, and Shane McMahon looking like a frog that had been hit by a car. Now here's the thing, on the face of it, you're probably thinking that wasn't really a very good match because it was a bit short and a bit weird and then all that stuff goes on, but WWE might, just might, and I am assured by my very learned colleague Michael Sidgwick that it is a massive might, have accidentally stumbled across one of the best long-term, intricate, clever bits of storytelling the company has done in many years. I will explain. In WWE, the Bar are the best tag team. They have beaten absolutely everybody. They are almost invincible in tag team matches, but come unstuck. Indeed, they have one weakness, and that is when they cannot properly prepare for their opponent. When they're caught out slightly by who they're facing, they always lose. The Hardy Boys returned at WrestleMania out of nowhere, were inserted into the tag team ladder match and beat the Bar for the tag team championships. Next, the Shield reformed seemingly out of nowhere, and Ambrose and Rollins beat the Bar for the tag team championships. Then Jason Jordan and Seth Rollins were thrown together as an odd couple and beat the Bar for the tag team championships. Then Braun Strowman pulls a literal 10-year-old out of the crowd. You can't prepare for that, and beats the Bar. And then what happens? Who was the last team they got beat off? The Deleters of Worlds. Be former enemies turned allies. You can't prepare for that. Then last night, or possibly the night before, depending on when this video goes out, they faced the team of The Miz and Shane McMahon. You can't prepare for that, and they get beat again. Now, the reason I'm making such a big song and dance over that is because it adds a brilliant, clever layer of storytelling to a match that without it is just, well, I'll find the right word here, really, really, really dumb. Super Shane McMahon, that's what we've got to call him now, isn't it? He had one of the most decorated singles competitors just on the outside of the ring for pretty much the whole match. 49 shooting star press, covering his gut with his t-shirt while getting 20 Joe Coffees from Cesaro. Pretty much did it all by himself, and then at the end, didn't know whether he was having a poo or getting his hair cut, did he? Absolutely out of it. 2.5 stars.
Much like Asuka showing everyone in the opening match of the night that there are more good wrestlers in WWE than just Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey, Sasha Banks had an opportunity to prove herself once again and remind everybody why she is the boss. And that is exactly what she did against the baddest woman on the planet for the Raw Women's Championship. From the get-go, Sasha was motivated and driven, and she very much looked like a woman with a point to prove. Ronda Rousey was similarly amped up, and she seemed like she had a chip on her shoulder, not just with Sasha Banks, but also with the WWE Universe. It didn't take long for the mind games to start in this one, both Banks and Rousey mimicking each other's taunts, trying to get under each other's skin and really get the advantage early on. Ronda would kind of take the lead in the match to begin with. She was obviously angry with the WWE Universe. She was looking at them while holding Sasha, saying, "You think I can't wrestle? I'll show you some wrestling," before she tried to rub salt in the wound of the boss by using, well, one of her favourites, Eddie Guerrero's 3 Amigos, and she almost pulled it off before Sasha managed to counter the last suplex. And that would prove to be a theme in this match, as Sasha's homework clearly seemed to be paying off. She managed to counter quite a lot of Rousey's technical manoeuvres and was disabling her piece by piece before she began to work on the arm of Ronda Rousey, hoping to disable that ever so vicious armbar of hers. Brilliantly though, that would open up the boss to all kinds of lethal striking game from Ronda Rousey, and she, I tell you what, she comes with such a legitimacy with her MMA background that there were strikes when she lands them to the body. Oh my God, Sasha Banks was feeling each and every one of those. And you could argue that that kind of subverted the whole feeling that maybe was going into this match. It was now Sasha who was looking for the technical maneuvers and the submissions, while Ronda Rousey returned to her wrestling ability and her clinical striking. Sasha really began to take the fight to Ronda Rousey, and you could feel in the fans, and obviously while we were watching it on the stream, you could kind of feel that the air was beginning to change, and we all were starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, we were going to get an upset. But rather than result in Sasha Banks winning this match and dethroning Ronda Rousey and completely pulling to a halt her undefeated streak, not including that tag match with Natalya, that's not what we got. What we got instead was Ronda Rousey upping her game to the next level and showing us that there's another bit in Ronda's repertoire that we haven't yet seen. After Ronda countered one of Sasha's suicide dives to the outside and turned it into an armbar where Banks was tapping out on the outside of the ring, but of course it has to be in the ring. Ronda Rousey's blows looked like they might have been overwhelming the boss at one point, but Sasha managed to get her foothold back in the match and turned it into a submission masterclass, to be quite honest. Genuinely, I think quite a lot of us were thinking that maybe, just maybe, she was going to get the submission victory. It all started to get very nasty, and the dark side of the boss began to come out of her. It was just vicious. She had Ronda Rousey in the bank statement. She was pulling at her face with her arm. She got like an armband that she was putting in her mouth. It was brutal, to be quite honest, verging on illegal in the match, but it wasn't going to be enough, because just as we thought maybe she might actually win it with a bloody Fujiwara armbar, Rousey managed to counter and would eventually land the Piper's Pit finisher, put Sasha down 1, 2, 3, and Ronda Rousey picked up her first pinfall victory in her WWE career. 3 3/4 stars for this one. Ronda manages to retain her title. Sasha reminds the rest of the world that she is still indeed one of the best women's wrestlers around. We did also get a little 4 horsewomen tease from Sasha, which perhaps suggests we haven't seen the last of these two.
Why, oh 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 why, why, oh why am I talking to you about this match in the middle of this video and not at the very end? Now, that is actually really good. Now, given that your boyfriend and all of his friends are occasionally in the comments of our videos saying that I don't really like women's wrestling, it's not really all that good, I must just pretend I think it's quite good so that girls will talk to me. Well, one, lol, it actually works. And two, I'll give him this one for free for large parts of the Women's Royal Rumble match. It was absolutely hopeless. Pretty much until bang on number 13 when Charlotte came out, this felt like nothing more than one of those messy, thrown together WrestleMania battle royales they have just to make sure that everybody gets on the DVD and gets their extra little paycheck. The biggest thing they've got all year, this is what that should be, and it just felt like an absolute cluster. Bleh. Even when they got Ember Moon out there near the start, like the spots they were doing and the bits and the eliminations and just the rivalries they had in the ring, everything was just sloppy and unthought through. We just had Asuka versus Becky, which was really good, really technically accomplished. We had Ronda versus Banks, which I think genuinely was match of the night. And then it was just fall over, miss your clothesline, kick and don't get anywhere near it. It was just, it pains me to say it, but that first third of that was pretty much all the reasons why people said they should never have done this in the first place. Not even gonna talk about Zelina Vega. I mean, the hiding under the spot in the ring is a bad spot. Genuinely, it's not really that good. It's never been done well, has it? But then repeatedly poking your little head out and being like, and then the Hornswoggle bit where he chased her around. If you're struggling to understand why that's bad, why in 2019 that's not something you should do, I want you to answer the following question. What were WWE trying to say was going to happen if he'd caught her? There were some positives about the main bulk of the match. Kacy Catanzaro, the big one for me, she is a star in the making. She will eventually, when she arrives on the main roster, or even when she gets a good run in NXT, be absolutely incredible to watch. I think Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose, despite the problems they've had, both look ready for decent singles pushes for their own kind of storylines, reasons we should invest in them. And there's got a bit of criticism, but I think the lack of legends, the fact that we didn't have all these stars from the past coming in like we did last year was underwhelming. I can see why it would disappoint people, but it is a positive when you think about it. Like, for better or worse, for good or bad, that match entirely stood on its own 2 feet. It was the product, it was the Women's Royal Rumble of the current women's roster. That was the women they have now, the women they book now, past, present, future. It was their Rumble. And like I say, for better or worse, it will get judged on purely the merit of the current roster. Just largely for worse. Everything that was wrong with the first 2/3, every little bit of that didn't quite work, they absolutely smashed off the face of the earth in the closing segments. Bayley, Ember Moon, even Nia Jax, Bliss coming back, Charlotte, Becky, they were all, Carmella now, because Carmella's actually good, I've been saying it for months, they were all absolutely brilliant, and the closing stages of this were just booked. Mwah. We got the exact ending that pretty much every single person wanted, and the argument for never getting this normally is that, well, if everybody wants it, it's not a surprise, it'll not be any good. Everybody wanted Becky to somehow get into that match and then win it, and that is precisely what we got, and it was no less impactful, no less spectacular, no less brilliant for it being what we wanted. You see, WWE, it's okay sometimes to give us what we want. It gave me a moment I genuinely craved as a fan, and that is what we tune in for. It was perfect. I just can't believe that wasn't the end of the show. It was a 5-star finish to what was otherwise a 2-star at best Rumble, in my honest opinion. Like, Rumbles are made of these big moments because, of course, I mean, the matches are an hour long. They can't be good from start to finish. So a 2-star Rumble, a very bad Rumble up until that end point, it's not the end of the world so long as they give you the moment, and by God did they give you that moment.
For me, this is where the pay-per-view kind of started to lose a little bit because of what, in my opinion, was sort of a weird match order. We had the Women's Royal Rumble just before this match, and then we were expected to have this match, which was obviously, there was so much anticipation, so much excitement that went into the Women's Rumble, so much energy. We had the euphoria of Becky eventually getting the win, and, well, the majority of the fans getting what they wanted as the end result from this. And you just needed 5 minutes to catch your breath. So the match that followed was always going to be a tough one to sort of do anything remotely that the fans were going to be interested in. Which begs the question, why did the Women's Rumble not end the pay-per-view? I don't know, I don't book the show, but nevertheless, someone had to follow that match, and it just so happened those someones were Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles. They squared off in the WWE Championship match, and while everyone was probably predicting quite a technical affair from these two, maybe it was a hard sell for an audience who were absolutely exhausted from the previous match. From the word go, the fans just felt flat. They were not interested in this match at all. Like I say, I don't know if that was exhaustion or just no interest in the type of match, because this felt like it was a very New Japan style match. They were going hold for hold, they were going strike for strike. It was slow, it was methodical, rather than a 100-mile-an-hour sprint that perhaps the WWE Universe are used to seeing. In the ring, you can't really fault it. It was a technical masterclass, two guys with ring IQs that are much higher than anybody else in the company pretty much. And to be honest, it might not have fit in that mold there, but you can't take it away from it. It was an interesting match from two of the best wrestlers in the world, arguably. But nevertheless, you got your nice fat slice of sports entertainment, because ultimately, despite all of that, this match will be decided by a lovely interference by, drum roll please. Do you know what it is? I'm not even going to put a drum roll in here when I do the edit afterwards. I quite like the idea that it doesn't even deserve a drum roll, because the person who came down to the ring was none other than Eric Rowan. I mean, we'd had 20 plus minutes of technical wrestling. Yes, the fans may not have enjoyed that. They might not have been up for that. They might not have been interested in that at all. But that's 20 plus minutes to then just throw that away for essentially an interference by Eric Rowan. Styles was kind of getting the upper hand. He'd had a couple of calf crusher attempts, and then we reached the point where he kind of had BRYAN was going for a kick. He ends up guried Mike Chioda, and then from that point, Styles hit the Styles Clash. Mike Chioda was obviously on the floor, couldn't count it, and then in came Eric Rowan, picked Styles up by his face, and did like a face choke slam? I don't know, but apparently that was enough to beat AJ Styles. One of those, no knees for BRYAN, nothing like that, just a one of those, and Mike Chioda miraculously came back to life, and Daniel Bryan would get the cover, 1, 2, 3, and that was the end of the match. And on the topic of 3, that's exactly what I'm going to give this match. 3 stars for it, because ultimately, despite the baffling part of the match, the match itself, the wrestling that was involved in it, was good. You can't argue that these two are proficient, they are excellent at what they do. Maybe it was just wrong place and wrong time altogether, but ultimately, that part of the match wasn't bad, it just wasn't suited for what they needed. I'm going to give all of this Eric Rowan stuff the benefit of the doubt, and here's why. Because Daniel Bryan, the new Daniel Bryan, has been excellent, and if this leads, ultimately, and a long way down the line, if this leads to Bryan having his own stable, a la the Straight Edge Society, Bryan is the leader, and a bunch of hippies in plaid shirts doing his bidding and sort of being general heels and working just annoying people in general, then count me in, because that will be great, and Daniel Bryan, I've got full faith, will manage to execute that well. Still, very weird, very underwhelming at the time, and I'm hoping there's a bigger payoff that kind of makes it feel more worthwhile.
Gonna hold my hands up here, I was quite nervous about this one. Brock had, let's just say, sold, or at least done his job as he was expected to in his 2 previous title matches, especially for Bryan. Was getting a 3rd in a row gonna be too much for an idiot dreamer moron like me to expect? Apparently not. Apparently this is where it peaked from. The fact that Brock had apparently handpicked Finn Balor was very obvious right from the start of this match, because he worked his little weird contrasting coloured eyebrows and purple face off for that man. Alright, so straight up, we've seen this before. The plucky challenger takes on Brock Lesnar and is, despite being really, really good at wrestling, really much better at wrestling, Brock Lesnar is just such a force of nature, they can't quite get the job done, but they book it in such a way that you elevate them in defeat. We saw it with AJ Styles, first of all, where he looked absolutely phenomenal, if you'll excuse the pun, in defeat to Brock Lesnar. And Daniel Bryan, not so very long ago at Survivor Series, looked insanely good, even though there was a little bit of fortune in how he got the upper hand. They made me believe he was going to tap, and that's all I want. What we wanted here was something similar for Finn, without it simply being a repeat of those 2 matches. Don't forget, they were a year apart. There was time for things to change in all of that, but it's only been a few months removed from the Bryan one. If we got a repeat, it was going to be quite bad, and we actually got a fresh take on this genre, and it was good. Like, I mean, watch it back. Finn Balor dominates Brock Lesnar. He attacks him right from the off. He batters him. He's quick. He's relentless. He counters all the big moves. He gets the grill, the table spotter right into his good pointy bit, right into his gut. Who saw that coming? Well, I mean, Balor did, because he booked it, but apparently WWE didn't know anything about it, because if you're hitting a man in the gut who has lost 1/3 of his colon and was beaten in a UFC match by a man using this exact same strategy, mention it. because that would have put it over huge. Like, we got it when we were watching on the live stream. We're like, oh my God, he's using the thing. I've forgotten the guy's name because I don't watch UFC. He's doing the thing he did, and he might actually win. Like, WWE have to put that over to their audience, surely. It was a massive thing for Lesnar at the time. He got a third of his colon removed, and the first thing the guy did in UFC was just have that in your gut. And Brock was like, oh God, that's terrible. Balor's doing that, which gives him a legitimate chance of winning that match, and they didn't put it over on commentary. Anyway, if you're watching it at home and you know that story, then God, you believed, didn't you? Didn't you just believe that Finn Balor was going to beat him just for the tiniest bit? I did. It was really good. But as ever with every Brock Lesnar match, he is too much for these mere mortals to overcome, and he couldn't do the German suplexes or the F5, so he trapped him in. I think it was a reverse Kimura lock, not an actual Kimura lock, and Balor tapped very quickly. It was only about 8 minutes long, this match, and I could very happily have gone for another few minutes. Honest love, I swear to God, that happens to all men, doesn't it? Anyway, he comes off the top, does the coup de grace. I was like, this should be the start of the finish, not the actual finish. I think Brock did, in 8.5 minutes, I think Brock and Finn did about as much as we could expect them to do, realistically. It was quite good. I can't give it, Brock and AJ was really good. Brock and Bryan was really good. Brock and Finn was just a nice twist on the genre, but nowhere near as good as the pair of them combined, was it? I'm ranting now, aren't I? I'm rambling. 3.25.
And finally, we finished things with the men's Royal Rumble match. Now, a lot of people, myself included, probably yourself included, had Seth Rollins pegged to win the whole damn thing from the very start. It's looked like that. The foreshadowing seems to have been that way. And, in fairness, almost all of the betting sites before the match had completely suspended betting because Rollins was the nailed-on favourite for this one. So were we going to see them veer away from that and give us something different? Probably not, we were expecting, but the fact they decided to put the men's Royal Rumble on last suggested they might have had something, a bigger finishing shot, than Becky Lynch winning the women's Royal Rumble and preparing herself to go to WrestleMania. Or so we thought. What we got was arguably not that at all, actually, but Jesus Christ, did we get some weird and wonderful things in this Royal Rumble. And let me just try and break some of them down for you. We opened the night with Jeff Jarrett and Elias in the ring together. Of course, two men who love a guitar, but ultimately it would see the former get smashed in the back with a guitar by Elias before swiftly being eliminated from the Rumble. He was in at number 2. Didn't last very long for old Double J. Kofi Kingston did his usual traditional spots, although this time he did 2 of them. One was just like a little head spin thing where he kind of managed to get back in the ring. The second, slightly more impressive, where he and Xavier Woods managed to do some counterbalancing sort of stuff. Woods was the powerhouse who walked with Kofi on his back and managed to get him back in the ring before both being eliminated by Drew McIntyre. We also had a whole list of surprise call-ups from NXT, the likes of Johnny Gargano, Aleister Black. We also had Pete Dunne, who was in there, some great names who we very much welcomed into the fray, and that was noticeable. It was nice to see they weren't relying on legends and nostalgia for this one so much, obviously Jeff Jarrett aside. It was more about what we have now and a who's who, let's be honest, of names of quality wrestlers at their disposal. But none of these compared to the absolutely bizarre thing that happened with the number 30. But Adam, I hear you say, R-Truth was number 30. How could that possibly be a surprise or a shock? Well, let me tell you something, brother. Despite R-Truth having earned his position as the number 30 in the Royal Rumble, he would then be beaten up by none other than Nia Bloody Jax, who came, beat Truth up and decided to enter herself in the 30-man Royal Rumble. Oh my God, I was equal parts flabbergasted, confused, infuriated, and just generally sitting, probably right around here somewhere, in utter disbelief. What on earth was this? But despite how ridiculous this might have been and my mind being absolutely blown up by the whole thing, it did actually have a payoff in the end. Nothing of it to do with Nia Jax, I should point out. All she did manage to do while she was in there really pissed me off because she eliminated Mustafa Ali. I mean, what does that do for him? But forget about that. Forget about that, Adam, because you got something that was way much better than that. You got Rey Mysterio giving her a 619. You got Dolph Ziggler giving her a super kick before Randall Orton, young Randall, gave her the biggest RKO of the night. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, wherever the heart might be these days, hand on heart, that I will be watching that video of Orton giving Nia Jax an RKO for a very, very long time and dining out on it, because It was lovely. Overall, the match was definitely tailored for the inevitable Seth Rollins victory, and that feeling was only really made stronger when Bobby Lashley was eliminated by Rollins and then dragged out, and Rollins got beat up and smashed through the announce table. I think me and everybody else in the whole universe suddenly realised, yes, this was definitely happening, and the foundations for the architect to get the win were very much laid. And despite the potential of maybe a Drew McIntyre win or possibly even a Braun Strowman win, a Seth Rollins victory was exactly what we got. We got a few interesting names who made it to the final 4, the final 6 kind of thing. Dolph Ziggler came out and managed to get a modicum of revenge on Drew McIntyre. He eliminated the Scottish psychopath, or whatever we're calling him these days, and he put him out of the ring. So in the final 4, that was Dolph Ziggler, we had Andrade, we had Braun, and we had Seth. Ultimately, it would boil down to Seth versus Braun, and after a little skirmish on the outside, we had little echoes towards maybe the Benoit Big Show kind of thing, where it was dragging him, trying to get him over the top rope. They both ended up on the outside of the apron, and finally, after a big tussle, Seth would land a curb stomp, which would see the Architect take the victory and book his ticket to WrestleMania 35, presumably to face Brock Lesnar at the big show of the year. Or maybe he goes against Daniel Bryan. Who knows? I think it's going to be Brock. It must be, but you never know. That's quite an intriguing little match as well. Seth ultimately getting the victory was very predictable, but I don't think it's a bad thing. Seth needs to be on that top stage, performing at the top level. He's been at the Intercontinental title level for too long, in my opinion, and as a massive fan of Seth Rollins, I'm never going to turn away him in a top spot against Brock Lesnar. Yes, I know people are saying Seth might have hit a plateau, but potentially this could be the one thing that leads him on to that next level.
So there you have it. That is every single match from the 2019 Royal Rumble pay-per-view, star rated as best as we are humanly able. Thank you so much for watching. And of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Keep it tuned to WhatCulture throughout the week, because there's so much to talk about the Royal Rumble. And you know we will, because I've got nothing else on, to be fair.
Because it's our job.
Yep, that's our job, that's the one.
That's the one, you know.
In the meantime, though, thank you very much for watching. Of course, been Adam from WhatCulture. This has been Adam from WhatCulture, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Toodaloo. Ooh.
A bit
Only them left.
Well, a bit
oh,
left.
good, good.
Right.